All righty. Hello, everybody. Hello. Glad everybody's here. Let's give everybody 10 or 15 seconds to log in. Make sure we got some folks out there. What's up? Hi from Delaware. Hi, Chastity. Kira, I think you should see it working by now. Obviously we had some technical difficulties yesterday during the 9 to 12 fitness session that we had going on, and it appears that that's been solved. So hopefully, fingers crossed that we're still that way. We've got some people from India here, some people from Michigan. That's awesome. Y'all are great. Let's go ahead and get started. So welcome athletes, parents, and coaches to another edition of #FFT Live presented by Fitter and Faster Swim Camps. I hope y'all are well, staying safe and staying positive. Let us know in chat where you're from and which swim team you're repping. If at any time the chat begins to get a bit overwhelming, you can minimize it by clicking on the red button over here with 3 white dots on the right-hand side of your screen. Please don't spam, y'all. If I see people spamming, I will ban you. We really don't want to take away from anything that's going on today. However, if chat's relatively calm, I'll leave it on. And if you have any questions at any point, go ahead and type those out and we'll try to answer those as they come in. Also, if you guys notice any connection issues, there's a button up here at the top of your screen that says reconnect. If you have connection issues, hit that button and click reconnect and it'll refresh your page and bring you back, and that should solve most problems. Welcome to this episode titled Stroke Video Analysis. This session's kind of designed for anybody who wants to learn about what swimmers look at and what they're trying to figure out when they look at their own race video. We have Amy Bilquist here with us today. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, guys. I'm excited to be here today.
We're happy to have you again. Obviously, Amy was with us last week with Brett Hawk and Katrina Konopka and Maddie Bannock, and we did a webinar on breaking down sprint freestyle, and I thought that was awesome. Amy did such a great job at trying to help us learn from some of her experience. So, Amy, tell us a little bit about where you're at and kind of what you're planning on doing tomorrow.
Yeah, so I'm Amy Bilquist. I'm currently in Scottsdale, Arizona right now training, but today I'm actually packing up a lot of my things and I'm going to go home and stay with my parents for a little bit in Central California just until this kind of blows over and I can get back in the pool and get back to normal activity. But a little bit about my swimming background. I've been on the national team a couple of times. And at the 2016 Olympic trials, I was 3rd in the 100 back and 4th in the 200 back. I'm a 5-time NCAA national champion in relays. Have a couple of American records on those relays. Go Bears. And last summer, I was the USA national champion in the 100 back.
Awesome. Top of the screen. Hold on. There sounds like there are a couple of people that have video issues. So again, y'all, if you have issues, there's a button like right up here that says reconnect. Go ahead and hit that button and it should solve most of those issues. Most people don't have pools open right now. Amy, your pool's closed, right?
Right.
So, there are a lot of different things that you can be doing to still continue improving as an athlete during these times, which are weird, admittedly. But, and to be honest with you, I'm happy I'm not swimming anymore because I don't know how I would be dealing with this personally. But that being said, like, how important in non-quarantine or quarantine situations is, video breakdown and being able to kind of pick yourself apart like that?
I think, like you said, quarantine or not quarantine, watching footage of swimmers, even watching yourself, is just like doing your homework for school. Like you're not going to do well on the test if you're not studying and doing your homework. It's kind of the same thing with swimming. You want to be a student of the sport a little bit and being able to watch other people's strokes or your own stroke. It really lets you break down what you're doing and see what you're doing, because sometimes you can't feel all the little aspects of your stroke. So you can really fine tune those smaller details when you go back into the pool after watching your footage.
Yeah, and that's so true. And Kira, this is going to be roughly 45 minutes long. This is going to be kind of a shorter session because we're just going to break down a couple of Amy's videos after she talks to us a little bit about some of the things that she thinks about for freestyle and backstroke. And maybe we'll talk about some drills and that kind of thing. So again, about 45 minutes. So let's get right into it, I guess. So Amy, talk to us a little bit about, what it is that you work on and think about as you're, in the middle of a set or in the middle of a technique bit of your practice.
So something I need to focus on a lot is where my hips are riding in the water. Backstroke, when I tend to get tired, I let my hips sink. And any backstroker knows that letting your hips sink is the biggest no-no you can possibly do. It makes the stroke a lot harder. So, and then I kind of do the same thing on freestyle too. When I get tired, I kind of just let my hips go. And a lot of that is I'm letting go of my core. So really that's probably the biggest thing I focus on, is keeping a nice tight core so my hips are up on both of the strokes. And then also just really making sure I'm getting into those high elbow catches and rotating on backstroke enough that I can get deeper water than just the super shallow water.
And what about for your freestyle?
Freestyle, again, with the hips, but my biggest thing on freestyle, sometimes when I reach out, I glide too long on the front part of the stroke. So right now I've been working on really just right when my hand enters, getting straight into that high elbow pull. And also when I'm finishing my stroke, that I'm trying to use momentum to bring my arm forward instead of just flinging my arm up and then driving it forward, just trying to keep that as a smooth motion. So basically the biggest thing on my freestyle is to stop having such start and stop motions and try to just keep it flowing, especially I'm a sprinter. So sprint freestyle, you really don't want those pauses in your stroke. So that's been my main focus. So keeping the tempo up by not having pauses in your stroke, and then also just getting to that high elbow.
Yeah. Okay. So, and those are all great things to be thinking about, I think, for everybody, right? Because, a lot of what we're talking about today really can apply to everybody that's in chat right now. So before we get into some of this video, talk us through what an average training week looks like for you.
So before this all happened, an average training week for me would be, I would have, weights Monday morning, and then in the afternoon I'd get in the pool, and that afternoon session would be a lot of power and technique work. So I would do a set with the buckets, and then I would go into some technique work and then finish with a little sprint set. Tuesday would be kind of my more aerobic day, so I'd do a double swimming that day, and in the morning's a little bit more technique based, but we're still going kind of far. And then the afternoon would probably be just a really tough stroke practice with, when you're warming up, there's some drilling in it, but it's kind of the meaty one. And Wednesday looks a little bit like Monday. Again, it's weights in the morning, technique and power in the afternoon. Thursday, I actually tend to go down and swim with the ASU postgrads on Thursday, just to get a little bit of that Bob Bowman yardage in. And that's not
get plenty of that.
Yeah, that's why I go once a week. But yeah, that one's not really technique based. That's just kind of putting your head down and swimming. And then Friday, I will lift in the morning, and then the afternoon's kind of tough again. And Saturday's maybe one of my favorite practices because it's typically sprint for me, but it's a lot of technique work before we go into any sprint. So I'm lucky enough to have a program that I have quite a lot of technique throughout the week, but it's also kind of technique, then go into something fast, or finish the practice with technique work as well, just to always be aware of what your stroke's doing.
For sure. And, it's interesting for me to hear you talk about what your training week usually looks like, because that's very different from what mine used to look like. Pretty much every practice I was doing a minimum of 5,000 or 6,000 yards. And there was a ton of aerobic in there, lots of IM. So, it's interesting seeing the individuality between how everybody gets the job done. Clearly, you're a very successful swimmer. So, what you're doing works for you. And I think that's a great message for everybody, is that, what I do and what you do may not necessarily be for everybody out there. The idea is that as athletes, we're finding out how to get better, and we're finding out what works for us to help continue that curve, right? Because I don't think there was any point in my career, and I think you would agree, there's probably not ever been a point in your career where you've sort of stagnated and stopped what you were doing just because, I'm happy with where I'm at. You're always finding things to get better, right?
Yeah.
And there was this there was an interesting comment that Caleb Dressel made not too long ago about about improving himself. And for somebody like him, by the way, chat, do y'all know who Caleb Dressel is? Let us know if you know who Caleb Dressel is. He's obviously a really good swimmer. Like, he's definitely water safe. But what's interesting about Caleb is that he's at a point where anytime he goes the best time, it's a world record. Right. And it's really easy to talk. Yeah, the chat's lighting up. Everybody knows who Caleb Dressel is. He's at an interesting point in his career where it would be easy to say, oh, I need to go break the world record again. But he has such a great mindset. He's like, I'm just trying to go best times. And I think that's an interesting point for everybody. It's like, even at the very tip top, highest point of the sport that you can get, where your best times are world records, it's so important to keep focusing on just making those best times and figuring out how to make yourself that little bit better. So that being said, I'm going to refresh my screen. So I'm going to pop back out and then back in here, folks. I just want to make sure that we have a video that Amy sent me up and ready to go. And we're going to get into the actual breakdown of some of her video. And she's going to talk us through some of the things that she's looking for and things that she's thinking about while she does these videos. So I'll be right back.
All right.
Really quick. All right. So, Amy, you sent me an above water backstroke video, an above water freestyle video, and then an underwater, it looks like, freestyle video. So can you tell us a little bit about when these were filmed and where, and sort of like what the idea was behind filming them?
Yeah, so I recently had a knee surgery in about middle of January, so that actually put me out of the water for a good month. So these videos were taken in on the tail end of February, early March, and it was basically getting back in the water after being out for a while. I'm sure you all know your stroke feels a lot different. So I obviously couldn't go very fast and was just being able to push off walls. So we really were just taking the time while I was swimming slowly, to work on my technique. So like you see, I won't be super fast in these videos, but a lot of this was trying to, when I'm getting back into shape, like a lot of us will have to do after this quarantine, to really focus on the small details. So I'm building up the stroke that I want to have instead of just splashing around. And then when I'm later in the season, be like, oh, now I should work on technique. So really, really, really trying to work on technique early on in the season. And so a lot of what you'll see is, when you're watching the above water shot of my backstroke, I used to cross over really bad. I'm sure a lot of you have been told, you're crossing over on backstroke. And I was always like, there's no way I'm crossing over. I can't feel it at all. And then my coach would video it and I'm like, I am swimming like this. So a lot of it was really just trying not to cross over and to be able to rotate earlier, which helps prevent that. And the other thing on my backstroke is really working on that elbow, like that high elbow catch on my backstroke right when I get into the water. And you'll see that my legs may not always be in the best position because I still couldn't kick very well at this point. But other than that, yeah, that's kind of where I was. Okay, so I'm going to pull up the above water backstroke video. And, everybody in chat, sometimes these videos can be, Faye, thanks for coming to all the other webinars. I appreciate that. One thing that's kind of weird about the videos is sometimes, the volume can be quite loud. So if it's a little bit loud for you, just use those volume controls on your computer or your phone to lower the volume, but make sure that you can still hear us, because we're going to be talking you through. So let me go ahead and pull this video up. And I'm just going to loop it a couple of times. So go ahead and talk us through what you're thinking about and working on here. So right here, you can see I'm really trying not to cross over when my hands enter the water. So this is probably the best my backstroke has looked in that sense. And just really, if you can kind of see, I'm really having to rotate earlier in my stroke to be able to get that hand in the position that it needs to be in. And I'm really trying to have a quiet entry as well. Sometimes I used to slap when I would go into the water. So really turning my hand sideways helps me get into that catch faster instead of slapping and then having to rotate my hand once I'm in the water. Gotcha. And you can kind of see on this angle that I'm really trying to get to that high elbow quickly. So once my hand is in, hopefully the next position you'll see looks like a 90-degree angle as I'm pulling the water. So where was this video filmed? So this is actually at my home pool. This is Cactus Aquatic Center in Scottsdale, Arizona. And this was what a typical Monday or Wednesday practice would look like for me. I kind of train by myself on some days. So definitely get a lot of attention and a lot of work on technique. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, one thing that I was definitely able to see in your video, just like you said, is that you're really working on that high elbow catch. And something that, a lot of swimmers sort of think about, I think improperly, is they think that they're pulling with their hands.
Right.
And that's halfway true, right? So do you want to talk us through like what you're actually working on pulling with and how that relates to the high elbow catch?
Yeah, so the whole goal of a high elbow catch is to make your lever, your hand, longer. So your lever should now be from at least your elbow to the tip of your fingers when you're in that high elbow position. So instead of just coming in and like pulling with your hand, when you're out here, I can pull the water really from my shoulder to the tip of my fingers. And that's going to be a lot more water moving through. So when your coaches say high elbow, try not to just think of using your hand. And not even just your forearm. You can really use your whole arm. And I think a lot of people will either get just in the hand or just to your elbow. But if you really start utilizing this whole arm, especially no matter how tall you are, I'm really tall though, so I can really use a lot of this lever. So being able to high pull, you can just really move a lot more water. And especially for backstroke and freestyle, that's just major, major, major.
And that's so true because, I actually hadn't even thought about that. Although I had heard Ryan Murphy kind of allude to even using the lower part of your arm. But one of the things that I always try to teach, is, that, you're trying to use this whole surface of your arm when you're pulling in both freestyle and backstroke. And at least for me, like that worked for me. But, just like you're saying, if you can use this whole part of your arm to sort of pull, that's great. But one thing I always tried to do in my backstroke was try to set up so that if I'm trying to go that way, actually chat, let us know how many of you guys have taken or have heard of physics before, because I'm going to talk about physics a little bit. But if I'm trying to go that way, I have to push in the exact opposite direction all the time. And this is something that you should really be thinking about as often as you can. So if you're trying to go this way, you want to push in the exact opposite direction all the time. It's really, really simple. So if in backstroke, if I'm swimming this way and my head is this way, I'm trying to make sure that this whole part of my arm is pushing back that way as long as I can possibly get it. And the better I am at that, the more efficient I am. And generally, if you're more efficient, the faster you're going to be, right? So that's a super great point. Amy, earlier you talked a little bit about your head position, more your hip position. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to the people in chat about how the head position in both backstroke and freestyle kind of controls your hip position and how the core ties into all that?
Yes. So something I used to do, and we can all at home right now, you guys can do this. So if you're just sitting straight in your chair and you try to flex your abs right now, just try to tighten your abs and now lift your head up and look at the ceiling. It's a lot harder, and it's also a lot harder to breathe. Your airways are kind of like, oh, that's a weird position. I don't want to do that. So for my backstroke, I used to definitely be swimming like this a lot when I was younger, because everyone always, when I was growing up, was like, look at the sun, look up, look straight up on backstroke. So I was really swimming backstroke like this, which pushed my chest out of the water, which made my hip sink. So now for backstroke, what I like to do is just imagine that there's a nice little pillow behind my neck and I'm just kind of leaning into it a little bit. So my head position is actually just, if you lean back just slightly with your head and keep that neck nice and long in the back. I think for me, that was the biggest thing, to try to keep the back of my neck as long as I could, because that really helps keep my head in place. And having it feel like you're resting for me has helped prevent this kind of motion or this kind of motion. So head position is huge. And just, as you can see, just moving your head up and down can really mess with your core and like whether or not it's tight or not. So when you're just a little sit back with the head, your core is nice and tight, if that makes sense.
That's very true. Talk to us about how that works when you flip over for freestyle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's kind of the same but different thing on freestyle. So instead of I'm trying to keep now the front of my neck longer on freestyle instead of backstroke. I'm focusing on the back of my neck. Freestyle, I want the front of my neck, and I want my head just nice and level with the water. And for me, I always like to swim with my eyes looking forward. I'm not so much like a looking down type of swimmer. So sometimes I get in the habit where I cheat a little bit and bring my head up. And that's really, again, what will drop your hips. So helping keep that neck nice and long. One, it'll keep your hips up, and two, it'll also make breathing during the race easier, because if your neck's constricted and you're trying to turn side to side to breathe, your lungs and your airways are going to be a lot smaller and not be able to get as much air in there. So if we really lengthen it out, and when we turn to the side to breathe, we'll be able to get a lot more oxygen in, and we'll keep in more of a straight line than if we were like really moving side to side.
So true, because when you start to breathe, a lot of people instinctively kind of move their head to the side to breathe instead of trying to keep their head in the middle and just rotating along their spine to get that breath in. And that can kind of create a little bit of a fishtail in the water as you're breathing. But also, this is something I talk about in a lot of our fitter and faster clinics. So let's imagine for a second that this hairspray bottle, I'm borrowing this from my fiance. Let's imagine that this hairspray bottle is our body in the water. Okay. So if this white cap here is our head, what we want to do is make sure that we're minimizing the resistance of the water on our body. So if the water bottle or if the hairspray bottle is moving that way, I want to make sure that my shoulders are making one hole through the water, that my hips and my feet are following through. And your head dictates how the hips and the feet are going to follow through the water. If you pick your head up, the rest of your body is going to fall. And instead of the torpedo, your body moving through the water, nice and smoothly like this, if you pick your head up, you're going to be plowing through the water like this, if everybody understands that. Same thing in backstroke. If you tend to pick your head up, your hips are going to drop. It's going to be the exact same thing. And from the front, like if your body's moving straight towards you like this, you only want to see the very top of your body as you're moving through the water. And that means that the water is not going to slow you down very much. However, if you pick your head up, now, can you guys see how you see a lot of the bottom of the bottle here? Chat, can you see that? So basically, instead of just the top of the bottle pushing back on you, now it's all of your backside for backstroke and all of your front side for your freestyle. So instead of it just being this part that's moving through the water slowing you down, now it's this whole part of this whole surface of the bottle that's slowing you down. So I'm glad everybody understands that. So
yeah, another thing real quick, just with breathing, if you're someone who has a real hard time just rotating your head and not following with your body, this is really a weird thing, but my coach told me this when I was little. Have you ever seen those like chicken on a skewers, like with you're like just a little piece of meat on a skewer? They always told me pretend you're that piece of meat on a skewer. So there's a stick going through your head, coming out between your legs, and when you rotate and breathe, you want everything in the middle of the line to stay on that skewer. So your breath can only be turning your head sideways. And for me, that was really good imagery. I'm someone who learns from imagery. So if that works for you, just pretend you're a little chicken on a skewer out there swimming.
Yeah, that's or like a rotisserie chicken. That's how I always said it. Like if everybody knows what a rotisserie is, it's like when you take a big stick and you shove it through the middle of a chicken and you kind of spin it around to cook it evenly. It's the exact same idea. So you want to make sure that you're only rotating on that skewer and not moving your head either side like this to breathe, because that's going to cause your hips to go either way. It's actually the exact same thing. So let's use my trusty hairspray bottle here again. So your hips and your legs do the exact opposite of what your head does, always. So if you pick your head up, the rest of your body drops. If you force your head down, if you're somebody who swims freestyle like this, it actually causes your body to kind of plow through the water like that. You don't want that either. But let's think about breathing for a second, because we're about to look at freestyle. So if I'm somebody who breathes way to the side, that's actually going to cause my hips to go the opposite direction. And if I breathe to the other side, I'm going to actually start wiggling through the water like this, and we definitely don't want that. So let's go into your above water freestyle video, Amy. And, again, I'll loop that around once again. And just talk us through what you're working on. Chat, again, if you have any audio issues, like if it's too loud, go ahead and use those volume controls to control the volume for yourself. Here we go.
So on this one, what I'm focusing on the out of the water portion of my stroke is to really not be having any starts and stops, to really just keep it flowing instead of having the pauses in the stroke. So hopefully you can see it's kind of looking just like an actual cycle, like a bicycle, instead of broken up strokes. And then as I get in, I'm really trying to get to that high elbow. So if you can kind of see through the water, I'm also getting into that nice high elbow catch.
So the video keeps stopping ahead of time for some reason. Let's go into the underwater video, because I think that the quality on this video is much better. And we're also going to be able to see really clearly what she's doing underwater. And especially here, you're going to be able to see that underwater catch. So let's give this a watch.
Yeah. So I'm starting off with freestyle. So on this, as you can see, I am really just right when I get into the water, immediately trying to get my elbows up into that high position. And when I flip, I want you guys to try to focus on my hip level. So again, focusing on high elbow and probably my hips being up is the most important thing that I was working on at this point. So some people have, when they swim, they have a nice pocket of water on their lower back because they're arching. So you really want to minimize that by keeping that core tight and having those hips nice and high in the water. So I'm building a little bit of speed here, still not that fast, but yeah, the hips are nice and high.
Notice her good streamline off the wall here, folks. She's getting 2 dolphin kicks and a good streamline off of every wall. That's a super important point.
And also pay attention, a big thing is you want to have as little bubbles on your hand as possible, because that means you're pulling more water. So something I was really trying to focus on is keeping those air bubbles off my hands and just really be pulling water and not air.
Is the rest of this video you sitting on the wall?
No, I think I go into backstroke a little later in it. Yeah.
Oh, okay, perfect. So look at that nice hot, that low elbow catch that she's getting right up at the top of her stroke, and she's pulling her hands straight back. So she's not doing this big S pattern like some people do. You want to pull straight backwards, because again, if you're trying to go this way, you want to push the exact opposite direction as often as possible. Guys, if there's anybody spamming in chat, I will ban you. This is my only warning. If you spam, I will ban you. Please don't do that.
So yes, this is really working on, again, trying not to cross over at the top of my catch so I can really get straight into that high elbow form.
Very nice. You have wonderful ankle flexibility, by the way.
Thanks. And trying to keep my hips riding nice and high in the water.
So also talk to us a little bit about how you pull your hand through the water, because you were doing something really interesting there. Not only were you pulling straight backwards like you should be, but you didn't have a constant hand speed on your pull. What are you doing over the course of your pull as it relates to your hand speed? I'm
definitely trying to become more aggressive and speed up my pull, because you're obviously catching the most water at the very, very top. So if you have to, not even a split second, but like just pause a little, but not pause isn't the right word, but just really make sure you're anchoring that catch. And then as you're moving through the water, you're moving less and less water because you're getting closer to your body. So you just really want to, for me, it's all about anchoring and then pulling and trying to rip through the water, because I'm holding. So if I'm up here, I'm holding the most water. And as I move through, I want to accelerate this portion, not only because I'm going to be moving the water quicker now, but also because when I get to that end, I can pop my hand up into that recovery faster. So for me, it has been the main thing to help focus on my tempo. And for someone like me, tempo is huge, because like I said, I'm taller, I'm 6'3". So if I'm having a slow tempo, I can just really not be swimming very fast. So for me, I just really have to focus on that tempo by really moving through the water and trying to pop my arm out as quick as I can to force that tempo on the surface. So you just talked about something else that was really interesting just now. So not only did you say
that you're accelerating your hands, but you talked about getting your hands out of the water to get up into a recovery. Chat, let us know in chat if you feel like you get stuck at the very back end of your backstroke pull. That was something that I struggled with at the end of towards the beginning of my career, was, you know, feeling like I was stuck at the end of my pull and I felt like I couldn't really rotate that quickly. So where are you trying to finish your pull in relation to your hips?
So I'm trying to finish my pull, like, honestly, right at my hips. So I don't want to feel my hips, like I don't want to touch it, but I want to be very close. I had a problem for a while where I felt like I was getting stuck as well, but I was also finishing too far out. I wasn't close enough to my hips. And for me, that was making me go really crooked in the lane. So if you've ever seen someone I had a big problem where I looked like I was ping-ponging down the lane, and obviously I was probably swimming a 102-meter race instead of a 100-meter race because I was ping-ponging so much. So for me, it's really getting my hand very close to that hip and popping up. And when I pop up, popping with making sure my thumb breaks through the surface of the water first, because you don't want to come up with your whole hand, because this is obviously a lot more drag than if you're slicing through the water. So for me, that's helped me not feel like I'm getting stuck and force that turnover rate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's an interesting detail, because and I did it a little bit differently. So when I tried to finish so what you're saying is you try to pull straight back, mm-hmm. and you come next to your body, and then you exit the water thumb up. Mm-hmm. I actually did it a little bit differently. So as I pulled, I tried to pull straight back, and then I would actually fan my hand down and get just a little bit of a flick here. And I would actually try to exit with my pinky. But the idea is that I'm doing what worked for me. And for me, when I exited pinky first, that meant that my arm was already in position for me to enter again and start that nice high elbow catch.
Right.
But a lot of people, when they're young, they're taught this, rotate your hand up above your body, mm-hmm. and then do that. And that works for people. But again, the idea is that you're supposed to figure out what works for you. So Lucas Motley, if you post any more about Star Wars, I will ban you. This is meant to be a discussion about swimming. So let's please keep chat to relevant topics, please. So let's go through the underwater video again, and I want you guys to really look at what she's doing. So we'll skip forward to backstroke, because honestly, this is more my area of expertise than freestyle. But I want you guys to really pay attention to not only the fact that she's accelerating her hand over the course of her pull, she's also finishing her pull close to her hips. And that's a super, super important point. So let's get that video up again. All right, here we go on the backstroke. So she's finishing right close to her hips. And I'll actually see if I can pause the video here in just a minute when you get halfway through one of your pulls. So you can see it really well right there. You can see her elbow is nice and low, and her hands are high, and you can see that the whole right side of her body is rotated. Another thing to think about is that you're not just rotating with your shoulders, you're rotating with your whole body, and that's your shoulders and your hips. Okay?
Another thing is, if you are looking at my kick while my kick's pretty shallow on the surface of the water, and if you're having troubles with rotation and connecting it to your kick, that's the first area I'd really go to. Is sometimes people really let their knees bend and get this wide kick that throws off rotation. So I try to keep it a little more shallow and close to the surface of the water.
And you can see right there, right in the middle of the screen next to her right hip, you can see her hand is actually pointed thumb up, exactly the way she was saying. It's pointed thumb up, and she's about to exit the water like that. So the idea is that even if you exit thumb up or if you exit pinky up, the thought process is the same with that hairspray bottle. So let me get out of the video for a second. The thought process is the same with that hairspray bottle. You're always trying to minimize drag when you don't want it. Actually, swimmers do a really good job at making drag. Chat, can you tell me a couple of examples of when you're actually creating drag for yourself? I'd love to hear what you have to say. But the idea is, when you're trying to recover, you want to get your hand out of the water as fast as possible. So also chat, tell me if it's going to be faster to move your hand through the water like this or like this or like this. You guys tell me. And the thought process is again, you want to minimize that drag. So if I'm trying to get my hands out of the water really quick, I want to exit either this way or this way. If I exit the water this way, the whole back of my hand is going to be slowing me down. So nobody's really getting the right answer on my drag question. No. So think about this. And this is a great point to make. This is why I ask these questions. So think about this. If I'm pulling on the water, what am I actually doing? I'm creating drag right here on my hand, whether it's for freestyle or if it's for backstroke. I'm trying to create as much drag right here as possible so that I can use that drag to move past my arm. Mm-hmm. Or in streamline, if you're trying to minimize that drag, you only want the very top of your body creating that drag. So swimmers are masters of drag, not only of creating drag, but of learning how to minimize it in certain areas. And this is a great point to talk about. So, Sydney Stromberg, if you drop your hips, that creates drag. That's absolutely right. And that's exactly what we were talking about again with this hairspray bottle. If you drop your hips, this whole surface is now a drag creator. But if your hips are right in line with the rest of your body, it's just the very top of your torpedo or the very top of your body that's creating drag, and that's what you want. So before we start answering some direct questions from chat, Amy, give us 2 drills that you work on to help your pull in freestyle.
Yes. Okay.
Creating drag in your pull in freestyle.
So one thing I do is, I'm sure, let's see if I can do this. A lot of you have heard of Superman kick. So you're just kicking on your stomach and your hands are up. I don't know if you can see, I'm not in streamline. My hands are separated. And what I'll do is I'm kicking. A lot of the times I'm wearing snorkel. And then what I'll do is I'll just do this. Just rotate this back and forth so I can really start working on that high elbow. And then so I'm doing this. Got it? And then the second drill is kind of attached to that. I start swimming freestyle, just the underwater portion of it. So I'm recovering with my hand back under the water. So I'm really just trying to keep it close to my body. And then when I'm up, just get straight into that high elbow. So it's weird. I'm not coming out of the water. I'm staying completely under the water. But for me, that's really helped me focus on creating that power up top without having the benefit of being able to throw my arm. So for me, it's really having to focus on tightening up that core and getting that high elbow. And it really helps you focus on whether or not you're getting that high elbow because you're strictly underwater. And if you're not having a strong pull up here, it's really hard to get that arm under the water back up to the top.
Can you show us on camera real quick? And I'll try to do my best to show this too. So at the front of my freestyle, move back as much as I can here. At the front of my freestyle, when I enter the water, I don't just pull straight down with my arm. Some people do, right. I do not. But if you're really trying to work on that high elbow catch, it's not just, dropping the arm straight down. There's also a rotation of the arm. You can kind of see my elbow popping here. And I'm trying to keep the elbow almost in the same place and pop my arm straight down. Because again, that creates this nice big drag surface that I can use to anchor in the water and pull the rest of my body past. Right. So Amy, can you show us what that looks like for you?
For me, it's like this. Same thing. So when my arm comes into the water, I'm trying to pop that elbow and then pull through. So it's just always right when you get in, pop the elbow. And like you said, some people do have the luxury of having that straight arm stroke. I don't. I'm not strong enough to be able to do that stroke quickly. So I really have to get in. And when I'm coming in, I'm really rotating my shoulder so I can get that elbow pop at the really highest level. If I'm not rotating, it is really hard to do a high elbow. So you really have to get in and rotate that shoulder into the water in order for your elbow to really go to that 90-degree angle.
Perfect. So the 2 drills are, Superman drill, where you're just kicking like this, and you're just working on that nice high elbow catch. And then there's something that we at Michigan used to call human paddle, which is where you're swimming completely underwater, but you're not recovering above water. Okay. So we'll answer that question, Suzanne, here in a second. So tell us two of your favorite drills to work on your pull for backstroke.
Yeah, so this one it's kind of similar, but a little different. So I would be just kicking on my back. I might have to like stand up for this one. Just kicking on my back, and I'm coming to this part of my stroke. So about halfway through my stroke, and all I'm doing is finishing and popping up my hip. So I'll kick, finish, and then this side I do it. So I'm never coming out of the water to rotate. I'm just kicking with my hands by my side, slowly bring this arm up and finish. So for me, that really helped pick up my tempo because I was learning how to catch water at the lower part of my stroke. I think we put a lot of emphasis as swimmers on catching water up here, which is very, very important as well. But you cannot forget about the water down here because this water is really what's going to help make your tempo quicker. So being able to and also timing your rotation with your kick, because you're kicking that whole drill. So now we're timing the end of our stroke to what our kick should be like as well. And then another drill is, it's kind of similar. What I'm coming in is I'm doing my backstroke, but very slowly. And the hand that's in the water, I'm just sculling all the way down while this other arm is recovering. So now once this arm comes in, I'm sculling. This is a very, very slow drill, meant to not be fast, like I said. So for me, that has helped really build up my body awareness to really just feel that catch throughout the whole stroke and make me strong enough to be able to accelerate as I move through the stroke.
And that's very true. And I just want to make a point for a second. So let's think about something for a moment. If I'm pulling, if I start my pull here, and the very bottom part of the pull that's possible is way down here, that means I have a set amount of time where I can actually pull, right? But most people only pull a lot on their stroke through here. So they'll only pull till they get to about here, and then they just kind of relax. If you think about it, you're literally giving up 50% of the time that you could be pulling on the water. And the first drill that Amy talked about works on the second half of the pull. So if you've only got a 50% grade in school, that's not very good, right? Right. No. You want 100%. So I want you to have 100% grade on your backstroke and your freestyle pull. So you should really be thinking about, okay, if I reach all the way up above my head and I'm trying to finish all the way down below my hips, I need to try to find a way to be pulling that whole time instead of just relaxing from here to here. Right. Okay. I had a question from Suzanne that was asking what you do to work on your underwaters. What do you do to work on your underwaters?
Underwaters. a lot of underwaters. And something that you can do out of the water is really work on ankle flexibility and your abs and your core. I think that's big. I think a lot of people tend to just think of underwater dolphin kicks as just your legs, but it's really a lot of abs as well. So unfortunately, dolphin kick, there's no real trick in my book. I've just had to really practice. I wasn't so good at them until I got to college, and then I was forced to be good at them. But yeah, so those are kind of my 2 tips.
Okay, so let's open up a couple of questions. Guys, I'm seeing a lot of people counting down the number of minutes to 45 minutes. Y'all, if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. So if you want to log off, just log off. But we're probably going to go over 45 minutes, so just keep that in mind. There are a lot of people asking why you had knee surgery. What happened to your knee?
Yeah. So as an athlete, I'm someone who's gotten injured a lot, unfortunately. And being so tall and working so hard every day, I've had a lot of wear and tear injuries. So unfortunately, my knee started giving out pretty early on in the fall season, and I ended up tearing my meniscus, tearing 75% of the cartilage on the back of my knee, having to remove a fat pad, a plica, and then sewing up a part of my tendon. So there was just a lot going on in my knee. Wow. Nothing specific happened. It was just a lot of wear and tear.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about like what that recovery process was like. Like, I'm sure there are a lot of people in chat right now. Chat, let us know if you're dealing with any injuries right now. What was the process like getting back into full swimming? Like, did you go straight back into like full training, or was there kind of like a ramp up into it?
Definitely a ramp up. So I couldn't be in the water at all for the first 3 weeks just because my stitches and my wound had to actually heal. And then once I got in the water, I was only allowed to use my arms, and I couldn't even push off walls. So I would push off the walls with my left leg and just kind of pull for a while. And then slowly I was able to start building in my legs, eventually got to be able to push off walls. And actually I was getting into my full starting a training block right when this quarantine started happening. So I was kind of getting back into shape when this happened, but it was a slow process. I definitely would have gotten hurt if I tried to go full throttle back into it. So just know after an injury, there is a grace period to let yourself come back into this in order to maintain your health as it moves through.
Yeah, so definitely build back into it. So if you guys are dealing with injuries and you've been out of the water for a while, don't just go straight into it. You have to make sure you build up. I'm seeing somebody who's spamming questions. Faye, I know that's not your name, but don't spam the same question over and over again. All right. I think the question is how could you prevent knee pain? And that's a really tough question to ask because we don't know what your knee is, what state your knee's in, what you're doing. So we really don't have any way to help you with that. Chat, let us know if you have any other questions for Amy. We're going to start winding down here. Because I know Amy has some packing to do. So if you guys have any questions for her, go ahead and type those out and we'll try to answer a handful of those before we wrap the session out. I think
I can get some Madeline's if you
go ahead.
So Madeline, in my race, I believe that practice is where you should be focusing on technique. And by the time you get to the race, it should just kind of be automatic and you shouldn't have to think much. So in my race, typically what I'm thinking is go, 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 go. So a lot of that is going to be focused more on my tempo instead of my technique in a race. So to answer your question, technique, I kind of save for practice. And while I'm racing, just try to go as fast as I possibly can. So I'm definitely focused more on speed.
Sure. So I got a question that has already been answered. So I'm going to let chat answer how tall you are. I don't want you to say it because that question was answered multiple times. So chat, let that person know how tall Amy is. Can you talk a little bit about your backstroke finish and like what you're thinking about and doing for your finish?
The finish of like the race?
Yes.
So as I get closer to the wall, something I learned is as much as it hurts, move your legs faster, because in 2016, I learned the unfortunate event of what it feels like to barely miss out on the Olympic team twice. So something I've just been continuing to focus on is when I get to that last 15, 10, 5, kick, like it depends on an Olympic spot. So really when I get to the end of my race, I'm just focusing on, I know it hurts and I know everyone's hurting at the end of a race, but just whoever has that grit, it's going to end up paying off. So really just trying to kick at the end of the races. So you don't have, in the future, you're on the upside of those quick finishes and you're not on the other side of being out touched. You are the one out touching.
Yeah, that's a great point and something I want to elaborate on for a second. So a lot of times when I speak to young swimmers about, the end of their race, they'll be like, how do I finish a race? It just hurts so bad. Guys, like, first off, let us know in chat if you've been in a lot of pain at the end of the race. I think we're going to see messages flying by that's everybody's saying yes, right? And if you say no, you probably weren't swimming hard enough.
Or you haven't done a 2-back.
Or that. But the idea is that everybody has been in a lot of pain at the end of the race. And the best swimmers in the world, the people that end up making it on the Olympic team, have this weird ability. And even the people that don't necessarily make it on the Olympic team, like the US is so good in swimming that that the grand majority of people that make it into the last, 36 or 48 spots, 36 or 44 spots at an Olympic trials even, have this ability to just take the pain away and sort of like take themselves to another place. But I think what everybody should be understanding from the chat is that everybody's in a lot of pain at the end of the race. And you just have to find a way to deal with it just that little bit better than everybody else. Everybody's hurting. It's all about how you deal with that pain and you keep your body going and you keep that discipline so that your stroke stays together, that you're not breathing into the wall on everything except for backstroke, because you can breathe on the way into the wall for backstroke. These are all things that really help a swimmer be successful. Everybody talks about, how do I make myself a faster swimmer? And we start talking about technique and body alignment and head position and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, what matters, especially in college and especially in international swimming, is not just how fast you are. It's whether or not you're able to win a race, right? It's whether or not you're able to win a race. So
Yeah,
talk
that
to us a
grit.
little bit. Exactly. So elaborate on that. Like, talk to us a little bit about what you're thinking at the end of the race to like just deal with that pain, or like what sort of mental skills have you trained into yourself to deal with that?
So I would say a physical skill and something like I was talking about my backstroke. I'm really focusing on my picking up my legs at the end of the race. On my freestyle, I'm trying not to breathe 15 meters in, because if that person breathes next to me, I'm going to pass him. But the mental aspect of it is really just, I've been in positions where I was like, I know I was in pain, but I'm in longer pain knowing I got out touched than if I just would have tried to like put in anything else in there. For me, it's going to hurt at the moment. And being humans, we're going to try to talk ourselves out of it. Be like, oh, I'm doing okay. I don't need to push this harder. But when you're in that position, go for it, because that right there, that's momentary pain. You know, when the race is over and you warm down, you're going to be okay. It's going to be fine. But getting out touched or something like that, that really hangs around for a little bit longer than the momentary pain of the race. So for me, it's weighing those and knowing that I would rather be in that momentary pain than having that moment of being out touched.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up here, folks. But there's one question I want to answer from Alicia Tavanor. I probably pronounced that incorrectly. She says, "When I do any stroke besides breaststroke, if I get tired, I'll do a breaststroke kick. So how do I stop that?" And I'm willing to bet that it all has to do with your head position. So it's really difficult to do flutter kick or dolphin kick when you're pointed straight up, and that's one of the reasons why we try to do that, because it's tough. But I'm willing to bet that if you're swimming with your head up like this and your hips drop, that's why you feel like you need to do a breaststroke kick to try and get your hips back up. So I would say try to bring your head down and into line, and that'll help bring your hips up. So give that a shot. All right. So let's finish up here. But guys, if you have any other questions, I'm gonna write Amy's Instagram handle in here. Amy, can you spell that out for me?
Yes, it's AMYBILQUIST. It's just my name. And you guys, I'll post a little question box after we get off this. And as I'm packing today, I'll sporadically go on and try to answer some questions that you guys have about backstroke or freestyle or just kind of anything.
All right, y'all. Thank you for staying so engaged. We're going to wrap it up here. So you're going to get an email in about 2 hours and 8 minutes or so that'll contain a link that goes directly to a page on our website, so you can watch this replay. You can also find replays of all of our past webinars on our website at fitterandfaster.com/replay. Don't forget to pay attention to Fitter and Faster's social accounts. We're going to be announcing 12 webinars for next week. I'm not sure if that email's gone out yet, but we've got 12 webinars scheduled for next week. So we've got a lot going on. Whenever a topic comes up that you're interested in, make sure you go down and register for each one of those sessions. If you just register for one, that's only for that one. So make sure you register for all the ones that you're interested in. Also, you should see an offer kind of up here on the upper right-hand side of your screen called Swim Videos on Demand. That's an app that we actually have, and it's filled with hundreds of drills and really useful swimming information, along with explanations from our top clinicians, myself included, shameless plug. And this is a great time to sit down and really pick apart what you're doing and try to gain as much knowledge as possible. And our app is a great way to do that. Thank you, everybody, or thank you to everybody who attended today.